What's up guys, DukeSloth here, and today we're answering the questions from the AMA, the Ask Me Anything that I did on Reddit. First of all, thanks a lot to King Scuba and Hyris Savvy and everyone at Hyris who helped me, allowed me to do this in the forums and announced it officially and everything. That is really nice, really generous of you guys, and I'm very thankful for that. And with that, let's jump into the questions as well as the winners of the giveaway. And I'm gonna try and go through all the questions, so it's 101 questions, and I'm gonna obviously not be able to expand as much on the answers because of that, so everyone gets a little bit of a reply to what they were asking. Let's go! First question by Rainbow Splat. What is DukeSloth's favorite god? Used to be a Willish, now I like pretty much all assassins, quite a few warriors. I have a feeling the next god that will be released will be somebody I like a lot as well. I also like the assassin style mages like Aquatic and the Morrigan, so there are quite a few. The question from Nashkan was, which gods do you think are currently underperforming or underplayed? I think especially Radiant stands out here. Shang-Kui is kind of down there as well as some other immobile gods like AMC. Overall, we don't have that many underperforming gods at this point anymore. Next question from Slaycrawl. What is your current view on Conquest balance and the viability of the current roster? I do think that the Conquest balance in regards to the roster, in regards to the gods and tiers, basically, is a lot more even than it used to be, a lot better than it used to be. Conquest itself, on the other hand, the maps, the spawn timers and all that stuff just lead to not so enjoyable games. It's very snowbally. The map's just too small, rotations are too quick, there's no real jungle, there is too much farm in that not real jungle at the same time. For too many players, there's too much sharing and all that stuff, so not too happy with that. I hope that will be changed next season though. From Ariani? Do you prefer assassins or warriors in the jungle? Assassins. I'm just an assassin style player, so I prefer assassins. That doesn't mean that I don't like warriors in the jungle, and when the team comp demands it, I like warriors in the jungle a lot, actually. 7th Archon. Thoughts on Erlang Shen in Season 4? I actually think he's pretty good at the moment. We've seen him played on the highest levels play as well, especially with the new build with the Death Toll, Vanguard, Mystical Mabel. That works really well for him. Yeah, good place overall. Not as bad as people thought he would be. Gogita AR asked, what do you think of Polynomicon and Gem of Isolation? Polynomicon, great item, but overrated. Great item on some gods that can really make use of it, like Ao Kuang, and great late game item when you have your power build going for the most part. But there are more options now that we didn't have, like Spear of Desolation and everything. So too many people build it in situations where you don't really need it. Like people think, for example, that it's core on the Morrigan, which is really not. Then Gem of Isolation, good on Poseidon and good on many others because of the stats now, which is a bit awkward to me because it's a little less about utility and actually just a good item overall. A bit annoying because it applies a slow to everyone quite easily. I don't really like soft CCN items. I don't like Frostbone, I don't like ISO all too much. But I still am less annoyed by ISO than by Frostbone somehow. Glorfindal asks, why do Hyris balancing often focus on making gods who are underperforming as good as gods who are overperforming, instead of nerfing overperforming gods to the level of those who underperform? To some degree this is always power creep. I get the idea here, but I would say that there is a bit of both always. There are underperforming gods that get buffed, but there are also overperforming gods that get nerfed. See, for example, Raven or Suket in recent patches. You know, they get like gradually nerfed and we get gradual buffs. What I personally don't understand as much is why certain gods just get entirely neglected. For example, Radiant or Bakasura. Just buff them a little bit, see where they go, and one patch down the road you can just check again. Zaveana asked, Hyris balancing in general, how do you feel? I think I've kind of covered the question with the answers before that, you know. I think balancing has gotten a lot better than it used to be. There's always room to improve, obviously, and I just wish that there would be a little less favoritism, maybe? That'd be nice. So, this is Shinigami X0. Which god do you think is overdue a new skin? It doesn't have to be one that hasn't had a skin in the longest time. I would have to think who didn't get one that I think is overdue. I mean, Hunbaz got one recently, but I feel like he's still a little bit behind on his skins in comparison to others, but I'm clearly biased there. I would like to see... I would say some diamond skins are actually overdue, like Nemesis, for example, still has the old diamond skin. I think those are very much overdue. But in the end, I'm happy with many gods getting a skin. I would always prefer to see gods that haven't gotten a skin in a long time and don't have many skins to get a new one. The next question is from Amelixo. Question is quite straightforward. I have no idea who he is, so here's my question. Who are you? I'm a YouTuber, primarily making SMITE content. I've been doing this for quite a while. I focus mostly on some sort of informational content, either about new updates, about items, about balance and all that kind of stuff, as well as doing fun content in between. I'm also very average at the game, I would say. I am not that mechanically skilled, and I focus more on the info side of it, and that's where my niche is. Inferno 18. Hey Duke, I need some advice. I say I'm going to make commitments to get a god to diamond, but I get lazy and I only get them up on mastery level. The latest candidate for this was Morrigan, who's only at 3. So we go. Do you have any tips to control myself to keep playing them until I finish what I start? I would advise you to do the opposite. You're playing this game to have fun. So play the god as long as you feel like you want to play that god and as long as it's fun. There is no real benefit in getting a god to diamond other than, you know, having a shiny skin for him. And if you want to really only reach that, then do it on the days where you got like worshipper boosters, like triple worshippers, and just throw that together and grind them in arena, I guess. But really, just getting a god diamond for the sake of it when you don't want to play him doesn't make much sense to me. Rebecca says, as a fellow German, do you feel like a part of the SMITE content creator community, or do you think not being from NA is a barrier? There's obviously a barrier with not being in NA. There's certain advantages that you get from being in NA, being closer to Hi-Res, you know, potentially getting invited to events and all that kind of stuff, because it's cheaper for them as well, obviously. But I do not think that there's a big barrier for me. The EU community is quite large. Actually, most of the biggest SMITE content creators in the YouTube scene, at least, are from Europe anyways. So, you know, it's not really much of a downside to it. And I'm involved in the European Hi-Res side of things, I guess, a little bit. So, yeah, not too much of a downside, really, for me, personally. I would just like to see more events in Central Europe. Raptorius says, Dear Duke, the question is simple. How did you find out about SMITE and what made you play... what made you playing SMITE that much? What made you play SMITE that much? I don't actually remember how I found out about it. I was playing League of Legends at the time, I know that much, and I basically talked to a friend. I was like, you know, I saw this game. I don't know how I saw it though, if I saw an ad or if I saw anything like that. But I ended up testing it, playing it, liking it, because it was basically World of Warcraft perspective and graphics in combination with mobile style gameplay, and that's all I wanted. H-Half asks, for Duke, just want to know, what do you think about the future of Hasten Fatalis? Will it be removed like Golden Bow? I don't think so. I don't think Hi-Res is going to make that same mistake again of completely removing an item and pissing everyone off. I think it will see some sort of change to it, and hopefully I would like to see it being melee only. We know how it is, you know, how some Hi-Res people really hate that melee only thing, but we've seen it being done to some items right now, so maybe it'll happen. We take a drink in between. Because these are a lot of questions. JC Swain asks, what is your take on Ymir as in the ADC role with a warrior or assassin support? If you have an assassin support, you're gonna lag frontline. If you have warrior support, that can be made up for. Generally speaking, he's got that early pressure and you can get that early snowball, but late game you're always gonna fall behind a normal ADC unless the ADC player is simply worse than you. So that's a downside because you need to be in melee range. That's the same as like ADC Fenrir or anything. Being in melee range for those heavy hits is always gonna be a bit sucky, especially because with the Ymir it's it's a little harder. So I think it's a very fun pick. I like any kind of like random pick, but in terms of actual viability, I would never expect it to be played in the SPL, for example. Zorark Poto. What do you think of the current XP gain at level 1 in Conquest? What would you like to see, what would you like to see the meta go? I would assume this is referring to the change that we see on PTS. I don't care either way. I think that the current level 1 XP or the changed version both lead to snowball in one way or the other. I wish there was a way to force people into, like, force the jungler into the jungle on his own, and force the mid laner into the mid on his own, the solo into the solo on his own. But as long as the mid waves clash earlier, that's not gonna happen, and that's, in my opinion, the bigger issue. Yoman CLV. What do you think about the current way of buying skin, as 5/6 of the skins that were released were inside chests or bundles? I am not happy about the amount of limited, somewhat restricted skins that come in chests or something like that. I personally don't have as much of an issue with it as others do, because I have the advantage of having bought a lot of gems on sales and then buying chests out on sale. That leads to, when a new chest comes out with a good skin, it's a 55 skin chest. With 200 gems each, I usually have like 50 of the 55 skins yet. And if I really want a skin at a chest, then I can roll the rest and gamble a little bit. But you have to get to that point, and until you get to that point, it's super annoying, and I don't think it's that cool, especially when you see a cool skin at the patch notes and you already know, okay, this one's gonna be in a chest, whatever. Mech Knight Rider asked what your Conquest tier list looks like. I don't have one at the moment, but I originally wasn't thinking that I should do one in the near future, but I've gotten so many questions about this that I think I'll just do one in the near future, and that should answer your question. Kelthos1 asked, what if anything holds SMITE back from being a better game than it is? I would say, obviously, the money that the company behind it has is a big deal. We can see this with Heroes of the Storm, which I would argue is, in most people's eyes, the worst game. But because it has Blizzard, it has all this promotion, it has that overlap with Overwatch being like pushed into it, it gets a lot more attention, it gets a lot more budget, and we could see that back at DreamHack with a SMITE stage versus the Overwatch stage, which is like a ridiculous difference with similar viewership. And the other thing is polishing. We can see that especially with Paladins as well. Paladins is a lot more polished because it was polished from the start, whereas, you know, Hi-Rez just, SMITE just has a lot of old code, and that kind of comes together with that, like, in that way, causing some issues for the game that could make it a lot better if that, you know, would just clean up. Yeah, and I think that's holding it back mostly. If this game felt more polished and ran more stable for most people, I think it would be climbing a lot higher. And that goes for the spectator mode especially as well. Next question, Dutch Justice. Who is your favorite esports team? I will not restrict myself to one team there. I like so many of the EU as well as NA teams. There are some teams that I don't like as much as others, but generally speaking, you will find little teams that I don't like. Obviously, if it's down to the finals, I would probably root for the EU team still. But I think there's so many cool people on most teams, so many great players, and I always have a slight bias towards those who have like content creators as well, because I think it's really cool when people from the pro scene help out others. But yeah, it's a lot of teams. Blue Piccolo asked, can we get the dimensions of your cheekbones? I don't know how to measure this, but I have his toothpicks here. Let me check this on my webcam. Right. So my cheekbones are approximately one toothpick long. Then you have, I don't know, and one, like, the length is like maybe 2/3 of a toothpick. So yeah, there you go. I hope that helps. Daddy's Girl 69 asked, hi DukeSloth, which god do you think is the most difficult to balance and why? The Morrigan. Simply because the whole kit always revolves around being able to play other gods, and you know, as long as not all gods are balanced, he's not gonna be balanced. Reborn Fisk, question for Duke. What are your predictions for you and the game SMITE 3 years from now? Too early to say. I don't see myself only doing SMITE content in 3 years. I don't see myself doing that in 1 year, realistically. I see myself, you know, playing other games in between and just keeping SMITE as a core game at any point. I think SMITE will still be around in 3 years. How big it will be depends a lot on what the next conquest change in the next season brings, what the matchmaking improvements over the splits bring, what other games get released. And I feel like that's a big point here. At the moment, it doesn't seem like there are too many new competitors rising up, and that will mean that SMITE will still be around for quite a while. Goobis, where's the best skin in the game? Best skin, Nemesis Tier 2. Worst skin, probably the old Zeus skin. I forget the name. It's pretty damn. No, sorry. Kawaii skins and pretentious German Nuwa and Skadi. There we go. Niagui asked, what made you decide to make mostly informative content as opposed to more typical humorous content? I felt like there wasn't too much informative content yet, especially when I started. There was a lot less. There's more now than it was back then. And it was also what caught on. Also, I started posting a lot on Reddit initially, and that was what caught on Reddit especially, because there wasn't much of it, and it got upvoted, and my early channel growth was very much dependent on, or to big parts dependent on Reddit, so I went with the kind of content that appealed to those people. That changed over time. It's not the same at all anymore, but back then that was the case. Mr. JDC77 asks, okay, I've got 2 questions for DukeSloth. One, how often do you solo queue while playing SMITE? These days, almost never. I am completely fed up with matchmaking as a whole. Like, if I solo queue, it's off stream. It's just, you know, no one else around, so I don't run any risk of being, you know, sniped or trolled or whatever. Or less of a risk at least. On stream, I'll just ask someone in chat to join in, because why should I solo queue when I can have people around me at any point? There's no benefit for me in solo queuing other than getting a major headache. 2, how has solo queuing been going for you when you did solo queue? It was a roll of the dice. That's why I don't do it anymore. You can't, like, in solo queue, you cannot influence who you're playing with. You either decide, okay, I'm gonna play a hyper carry every single game. If you're playing at a decent level, or if you're playing decently yourself, not necessarily at a decent level, then you can get away with playing a hyper carry and winning almost every game. In conquest, in casual conquest at least. Like, play, say, even a late game god like Kali. Get past 10 minutes and you'll probably win 80% of your games if you're good at Kali. But do I want to play Kali every single game? Do I want to play hyper carry every single game? Is that fun? For me, it's not. For some people, maybe. For some people, it's the challenge that they want to take on. For me, I think I'd much rather play with people that I'm in comms with, you know, have fun talking while playing the game, which I think is the main point of playing games, you know, is having fun. And, yeah, and just having some sort of, like, strategical approach. You usually get matched against people who are pre-made as well, to some degree at least, so I feel like it's while it's not a scrim by any, not even remotely close to it, it's still more fun than solo queue. Arcanius asks, DukeSloth, when it comes to SMITE balancing, how do you feel about guard plus items balancing, focusing on performance and conquest alone, when many of the community favor different modes that offer different levels of play and balance? Do you believe this is fair to the community, and should Hi-Rez focus more on general balance? I know I'm gonna piss off some people with saying this, but I think the focus should completely be on conquest. Conquest is the real mobile mode, and this is what the competitive scene is focused around. This is the selling, the initial selling point of the game, even though there are selling points beyond that. And that is, you cannot balance to multiple modes at once. If you want to balance multiple modes at once, you have to do it like they do it in League of Legends, where you have abilities adjusted corresponding to certain maps. Now, that is possible if you have 2 maps, like League of Legends, or 3. But in SMITE, we have so many maps that it's... Good luck with that. MustITMT2 asked, what is the quickest way to Mastery 10? Worshipper Weekend, Triple Worshipper Weekend, Booster, Team Booster, Q Arena all day. Devrish, can you do some videos on God matchups and counter picks in form of a guide? It's something I struggle with in the drafting phase of Conquest. Keep up the great videos. Thank you very much. I can, but it's a kind of a complex topic because it often, like, a lot of this is changing, or it's shifting. A lot of it is partially beyond my knowledge as well. Like, I don't play solo enough to be like be able to pinpoint every matchup down to its core. So I don't want to give information where I don't feel like I'm 100% qualified to give them, and that would be probably one of those cases. Which doesn't imply that that'll never happen, or for the jungle I could do it, but it's not a priority topic. Super Joayo. Duke, what do you think SMITE needs to be as successful as League of Legends? Money. Money, and they would have had to be first. And they weren't first, so they won't be. They will never be as successful as League of Legends. It's straightforward. Very, very simple. They won't get there. They won't even get to Dota level anymore, because Dota had the name behind it as well as Valve behind it. It's not the big company behind it that could afford to do that kind of PR and everything. Bitter truth. Based on the new changes to gods and items, what do you predict the upcoming meta to be centered around? I don't think we're seeing too many shifts at the moment. It's still the same early game push meta and so on and so on. There have to be bigger changes for that to actually shift. And basically the map has to change to get like a major meta shift, I think, at this point. So I don't see much. Mystical Mail's a thing. Salsa Overlord. How do you feel about haste and fatalities these days? Do you think it's going to be removed from the game, or do you think that will be reverted to its previous penalized form? We kinda had talked about this already. It might be reverted, it might just be melee only. Hard to say, I can't read the future, you know. But I don't think it'll be removed. I think it's too expensive now, and it sucks for Khaldi and Bakasura a lot. Mouse YX, are you believe that Bancroft or Hades should nerf? I don't think that Hades should be nerfed. I think his buffs were very much justifiable and as good as getting picked now, and people just need to learn to play around him again. Bancroft's, maybe. I think Bancroft is a little overrated. It's just a combination of Bancroft and Hades that is a bit gross at this point. I personally still don't like Bancroft that much, but I see how it's very, very strong in certain gods as of now, and maybe it needs to be looked into. More than Hades, I think. Beep 12. Do you play ranked, and if you do, what's your current rank? I haven't played ranked the split. I will probably eventually, but I have not touched it. The thing for me is, if I want to play ranked, I wouldn't want to play my qualifiers on stream. Just, you know, reasons. I want to be fully focused on them, and I don't want to get sniped. And if I do that, I have to take the time to do that, which I currently don't really have. And also, the thing for me is that I constantly need certain specific footage, and I can't just play certain specific gods on ranked, because if I play ranked, then I play ranked to win. So, might be a while until I play it. But I will play it just for the rewards at least. Last split, my division was gold after going 6 for my qualifiers. Alpha Noosh. When would you recommend getting the item Jade Emperor's Helm as a support? I usually pick it up to see if I see 4 physicals on the enemy team, although it could be an item for magical soul laners, junglers. I asked because I don't know how effective the item is. It can be effective sometimes. I would generally prefer especially Sov and Thebes and probably even Shogun's Kasari just to give my own carries more strength. But there are situations where it can be applied. I just feel like the general aura items are usually a little more favorable, and CDR is often a little more favorable. Razvan Killer 07. Will you ever do gameplays with fans? I do gameplays with fans or viewers on stream. If you check out twitch.tv/DukeSloth, you can just join in, and if you're early, you should follow the channel. I will often ask if anyone wants to join in for games. And that's when you can join in, and that's pretty much every other stream I do. Darth Mac. SMITE has several game modes, and many content creators and streamers claim that SMITE needs to improve on getting people to play Conquest more and the others less. And also to buff and nerf gods around only Conquest. I want to know if you share this opinion. This means, why isn't there a Anubis, Aposh, AMC, Bakasura buff? All needed buffs for Conquest to not be bad in most pro players and top level ranked players' opinions, but because they can overperform in other game modes. Okay, I don't quite get that, but I do think that balance should be focused around Conquest. People should be, Conquest should be promoted as the mode people should move into. And this may sound a little arrogant, but it is a little arrogant, but if you play Conquest a lot, after playing other game modes a lot, I used to originally start playing almost only Assault and Arena. You eventually see why you should move people towards Conquest. I don't know what the deal with the buff is. I don't think it's because of Conquest. I think it's because certain people at Hi-Res believe that those gods are just really good for some reason, or because they look at the low elo win rates and use that as the point of balance. But yeah. Radiated Chat, what do you think could be done to rage him to make him viable? Your idea for rework, buffs, or changes? Hard to say, hard to say. Probably a little more early game pressure, just to give him more emphasis on that. But I'm not exactly a raging expert, so I'll hold my judgment on that. Glutinous Fury. Can you use your elite Hi-Res connections to get Face Crusher Cabrakan released? I wish. I wish I could. Because that skin is friggin' amazing and it would easily compete with the Sylvanas skin. So that would be really sick. Spirit Sensei. What skin for Chang'e do you think is the best now? Moonlight Love forever, baby. Edgy Art. Thoughts on Haste? We had that. Facing Fatalis Left. We had that a few times now. Daniusus. What god do you have on Mastery 10 first? The Nemesis. Figgy the Fig Tree. Would you consider being a coach for pro Smite players or doing what you do for Smite for other MOBAs? Coach? I mean, one can dream, right? Realistically, the thing for me is, I had some coaching offers for like Challenger Cup level teams. Thing is, they were unpaid. And I would be willing to do something like that. I would be willing to invest a lot of time to that. And I think I have a certain base knowledge and I have the will to experiment around to generally coach for a team. But I wouldn't do it for free because it would mean that it's time that I cannot invest into YouTube. And, you know, can't do both if one is unpaid because of time restrictions. And at the same time, I think that most pro teams would rather have a coach, you know, that plays on a very high level. Mostly, there are exceptions, but that's what it usually looks like. Doing what I do for Smite for other MOBAs would be cool, but at the same time, I know that there are a lot of other content creators in other MOBAs already, so it would be a lot of competition. Depends a little bit on the MOBA, really. Otso asked, if you could remove one god from Smite, who would it be? At the moment, probably Carnonos. Love your videos, keep up the good work. Thank you very much. Will try my best. Nargon, do you enjoy playing Ranked Conquest? If so, how do you do that? Really? 90% of the cases, the answer here is no. The chance of actually having a good team against a good team are so low that... yeah, you get it. Drawer or Dr. R asked, what do you think of Warrior in a support role like Guanyu? Can be really good. In many situations, often underrated even. Robo King, what is your favorite item for each role? Jesus Christ. Death Toll for solo, and well, Mystical May for solo at the moment. Bambas for jungle. Or like, Jones for assassins. I still like Jones a lot. Though there are obviously a lot of choices now. Mid. Poly is very fun, I guess. Spear of Desolation is really cool. Book of the Dead, I like that because it's so underrated. Support. Shogun's Kusari maybe. ADC. Kins, I guess. Lord Deadpool, which god skin do you like the most? Nemesis T2. Giovanni, who are your least favorite gods and why? Apollo to Canonos because they're super annoying to play against and just have unfun kits with like a very instant, except for Canonos here, but instant response that is almost, not that it's impossible to counter, very hard to counter. With like less effort for them and more effort for you. MRNG-ing. Do you have any plans to join Smite Pro League as a player? No, I'm not even remotely good enough to do that. My mechanical skill absolutely sucks, and as such, that will probably never happen. Very likely never happen. Gabriel. Hey DukeSloth, I almost always play pre-made with my clan, but we have some problems with communicating. We are always on curse, but we often miss out to tell important information. Maybe you could name the most important thing to get sets so we can prove as a team. I mean, the most important thing would be calling out where an enemy is. Call out the missing, call out when you spot them, everything that revolves around rotations early on. Later on, the most important thing is doing the right shot calls for objectives, and this is what many teams forget, especially like Fire Giant, Gold Fury. So many people just ignore the chances for that, and finding out who does the best calls here is also very important. Morrison, what is your favorite god in each role? Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't really have favorites in most roles, so honestly, I can't really answer that because it would change within a few days, depending on who I want to play the most at that very point. I literally can't think of a single role where I have like one favorite god. I really enjoy ADC Hu Yi. That's maybe one. But Medusa too, so hey, I don't know. God of Death 912. Do you think Shang-Kui needs a rework or at least a remodel? No remodel for that guy, just clean him up a little bit. Rework? I don't think so, he just needs some buffs. MKX the third. So I need to ask that, Duke. How about the buff for Jing? Are these good to get her up like before or still down? Yeah, it gets her up for sure. And too much Sun is broken. How much is Sun broken? Very broken. One of the most broken releases we had for a while. Why 3? Why do we not see you post like before your videos of playing and meme? And you missed the whole video of my girlfriend named God of Smite. What? I mean, I upload gameplay again sometimes. Is that the answer you're looking for? I started that again. Spooky skeletons. I asked Pompon this during his stream, but do you think the new experience will change? Experience change will help Bakasura more than the hastened nerf hurts him. Pompon thinks it will, but I'm honestly not sure. I doubt it. I mean, you're clearing first wave with your ally, or and then you get eat on level 2, or what you can do now is invade, eat minion, and that snowball helps, yeah, but you have to play around hasten, and Bakasura still has the same issues before. Bakasura is an old bot outside of his ultimate. He's way too easy to lock down when he uses his 3. His 2 doesn't do anything for in fights when there's no minions around, and yeah. And another question from Scooty Skeletons. Do you think the new solo lane build could be viable on Bakasura and solo lane? I've done some testing and I've actually gotten pretty good results. I'm assuming this refers to the double starter, which I think could be decent for him because he works well in regards to sustain. Anyways, he doesn't need too much mana, he doesn't need any sort of healing because of eat minions, so Death Toll Vanguard alone should be really good for that. So maybe that could help him, yeah. But I don't think he'll come back as a typical solo laner. Nen Tex, what do you think about the current state of Guardian damage? I'm gonna turn on this light real quick because I feel like my face is getting very dark. That might help. Guardian damage. Too high. Moving on. Skefix, what is the best thing to do if you lose mid laner either by being out cleared or killed? Well, if you lose mid lane, then you're gonna lose pressure, then you're gonna look for farm elsewhere and try to come back late game. Or see if you can get your jungler rotate in more, or your support rotate in more, and just combine your strength in middle. You Kirby, when should you pick frontline supports and when should you pick backline supports? Almost always frontline supports. Backline supports only really work if you have a frontline solo laner or jungler who can make up for that, which at least in casual and low elo ranked is rarely the case. Nefarious Fusion. What are your sources and which criteria do you follow when talk about god builds or single god item viability? Sources in terms of websites are CredCalc, even though it's no longer updated. I kind of have my own version that I update in some ways, depending on what I test out. There's this one called, I think it's like Elite Ownage, which just does like base overview of stats, and other than that, obviously often performance in the pro scene. When an item gets picked up in the pro scene, you will often see me mention that and talk about how it functions. Single god viability likewise, usually very much, especially in like tier lists or high, like top 5 gods or something. It's pretty much always based on pro scene performance. And obviously my own testing plays in a little bit, but that's usually a minor factor because of my level of play. Daddy Spank. What is your view on how frequent new gods have been coming out? Do you like how quick they are releasing, or should Hi-Rez have longer intervals? I mean, we've seen us slowing down and pacing. I've actually talked to Hi-Rez about this a while ago. They will slow down the releases more and more over time as we get more gods. And I think that's a good way to go. For me as a content creator, seeing gods come out faster is generally a good thing. From a balance perspective, I don't know. In the end, I question how much impact it really has how often gods get released, because you'll see Canonos being broken for so long now after its release still that in the end it doesn't really matter. I'd rather see gods being at a reasonable, at a quick pace, but then also balance changes being at a quick pace. Kuro94, hey DukeSloth, have you ever played on console? If no, will you ever try? I have played on console once while I was at Hi-Rez in Brighton, but I failed miserably because I couldn't handle the controls at all. I will not play there regularly because there's no benefit for me in it, and I can just play the same game on PC where I'm used to the controls. Fendron P. What do you think about Bancroft's Talon? We had that. Oh, Bancroft's Talon Book of the Dead combo, sorry. Interesting for some characters with a high amount of lifesteal benefit, sustain certain amount of tankiness. Rarely possible to fit both into one build, but when you can, it's very potent, I think. Not Marks. Who is your least favorite god to play against, and to you, who is the easiest god to master? Easiest god to master? Jesus. That's a hard one. I'd say Nemesis. No, well, depending on what you understand as master. I think truly mastering a god takes forever, and I don't think any god is really easy when it comes to that. So yeah, no, I'm not actually gonna name a god here. My least favorite god to play against. I mean, it used to be Tudor and Apollo. At the moment, Hercules is kind of up there since his buffs is pretty annoying, and Canonos is up there as well, so those four. Budkada. My question for you is, what is your opinion on off-meta picks or cheese strats? Do you think it can compete with the current meta? Sometimes. If you play it clean, if you've tested it out often enough, and if you have a team that's willing to do it with you, it can work. I mean, Ego showed it a while ago when they suddenly pulled out the backdoor Bastet, and everyone else was like, how cheesy is that? But it worked. Whew! Us. For Duke. Is there any gods you would like to see added to Smite in the future? I theoretically, I wish, as a fan of Darksiders, I wish for the 4 Horsemen, knowing which mythology they come from. That's probably never gonna happen. To Berserk. Hey Duke, it's Berserk. My friend has been wanting a Hawaiian pantheon. What do you think? Sounds funny enough, I literally don't know anything about Hawaiian gods, so I didn't even know they had gods, so I guess. I usually don't mind too much which mythology they come from, as long as the god design, the god kit is cool. Xpixar. What new mechanics do you think would suit Smite, or would you like to see in the future god releases? I think anything that takes you over the map in a way is really cool, just because it has this nice feeling to it. This is why the game was originally promoted with Thor so much, and we see abilities like that being used again and again. I would like to see more use being made of that axis in general. Like, for example, there was originally this idea, this hope that Arachne would be able to put her web in a way that allows her to climb over walls to the other side, and with Smite's restricted vision, I think that would be something that would be really cool. Anything along those lines, I think, would be really fun. Shikako? Duke, if you could voice a new skin for a god, which god would it be, and what concept would the skin be? Oh, Jesus Christ. That is something I have never thought of. I mean, having a really random Bakasura would be funny, just because I enjoy playing Bakasura as a character. With some filters on top of my voice, obviously, to match it. Or maybe Professor Bakasura. I don't know. Just a random thought. And then we have T34MM4T3. Teammate. There we go. Can you think of any tier 5 god skin concepts for Guardians or Warriors? They haven't really gotten much love in that department, if any. Thanks for doing this armor, Duke. You're very welcome. Thank you. I think Anything with like a building up armor would be really cool, because really that makes most sense for any sort of tank. I don't have anything specific in mind, but maybe just so for example, a Xingtian skin, like starting as like almost a floating soul and then building up this heavy armor over time until the point where you can only see his eyes on his chest in the armor or something like that. Could be cool. Just a random quick idea. Fusion Reaper. DukeSloth, in terms of god abilities and passives, which ones do you think need a revamp or overhaul to their kits? Passives. Oh, there are a lot of weird passives. I couldn't pinpoint one that I have in mind right now, but I think especially passive is something that could be worked on, because some really feel a little bit outdated compared to the new ones. Revamp or overhaul to their kits and abilities in general. I am always very, very cautious with that, because I think somebody out there will like this god in its current state. If any god, low-key, because I personally really don't like the decoy, but I know that a lot of people like the decoy, so... You know. Likewise, Bakasura. I really hate the eat minion ability, because it just doesn't do anything in a scenario where there are no minions, whereas pretty much any other ability in the game has some sort of function, but somebody out there will like it. Send pigs, please. Health or defense? When should you build health or defense on a guardian? You want a mix of both. Usually you want to start out with some item that has at least some defense. It doesn't have to be much. For example, Gauntlet of Thebes is often not ideal to start with, because you want to have at least Mark of the Vanguard before to build up some basic protections. In the beginning you often want physical protections unless it's a double magical lane, because it helps against both minions as well as players, in addition like towers and so on. Health is something that helps a little later after that, usually a little more. Though there are obviously exceptions and specific counters where like you want to have a Stone of Gaia or something like that. But overall, make sure the mix of effective health is good. Huda pack or Huda pack. DukeSloth, which is your least played god? I have no idea, but until recently it was Loki, until I decided I want to get all assassins to Mastery 5. And which god are you most looking forward to join the SMITE roster? The next one that comes out at the moment. I don't want to spoil it though. And do you have any ideas why there's a sudden surge of Cupid heads on this thread? I would assume it's new members that have Cupid as the default face. I would assume that's because the armor was announced on my YouTube as well, and I would assume that's because that's the reason people came in. My guess here. Shargoya. What are your thoughts on Kronos in Season 4? Ever since the nerf he has received in the beginning of Season 4, he has been underplayed and undervalued, as well as underperforming. Well, which one is it? Underplayed and undervalued, or underperforming? You can't really have both at the same time that much, can you? At the very least, from my perspective, what are the nerfs you believe are necessary for Kronos to be balanced? For Kronos, I think he's actually in a better place than people think he is. And Zeros has kind of shown us that the Kronos can still show up. He has to be played differently now, that's the thing. Kronos, depends on what direction you want to put the character in. You could either focus him around the 1, and then you have to nerf the 2 and the 3, maybe the ult as well. Probably not all 3 of them at once, but you know, just take some damage out of those so he can swap around with the 1. Or you nerf the 1 and then in regard make him more ability, in that turn make him more ability focused around the other abilities and don't nerf them as much. HD as I sum, or so, 1. HD is some, I don't know. For Duke, when theory crafting a build, what elements tells you the main stats power pen crit a certain god needs in her build? What elements? I mean, it's just game knowledge, the game understanding that explains to you that you, for example, know that Sir Cat will need pen, but crit can also be good. Anaja benefits from pen and crit can also be good. Whereas you want to look at the items, the abilities of a god in regards to itemization as well, in how much of their damage comes from basic attacks and how much comes from abilities. And if you see that a god uses primarily abilities like Thor, you know that during your 3 you can't even use basic attacks, your 1 doesn't require you to be in melee range either, your 2 doesn't do anything except for attack cancels as well, and your ultimate is also revolving about basic attacks, then he obviously doesn't do that much with basic attacks. Whereas if you look at Bakasura, who has an amplification to his basic attacks in a 3 and not much ability damage outside of that, and his ultimate is another amplification to his basic attacks, that obviously requires a different sort of itemization in that regard. I hope that answers the question halfway decently. Snilt. What kind, if any, formal education do you have? Abitur, which would be the German education, and I'm currently finishing a bachelor thesis in business psychology. Hawkissimo. DukeSloth, I am one of your many subscribers and strongly recommend that others follow you as well. Thank you. Thanks for all the work you put into sharing information about SMITE with the rest of us. On to my questions. I've made several suggestions to Hi-Res to lower the VGS limit to better manage VGS spam, but they've replied that it's not in the current plans to change any of these settings. What are your feelings on the current ability to both VGS spam and map ping on SMITE? I frequently use VGS to communicate enemy rotations, gank opportunities, etc. and find that a limit of 3 would suffice to communicate 99% of the time. If you made the final decision to set limits, what would you select to balance the ability to effectively communicate but prevent harassment via pinging and VGS spam? I think that if somebody tries to actually harass via VGS spam, I would just try and mute them. Simple as that. Just mute the pings as well. I do believe that the limit is not too high, and this is not because you can't communicate effectively what you want to do this way, but because people don't pay attention in SMITE. And if I do a call, I often do it at least twice, because sometimes people hear enemy missing right and they will just go completely over the head. But if you hear enemy missing right, be careful middle, you're like, oh, I think something's going on in right. Or if somebody calls attack the fire giant, attack the fire giant, attack the fire giant, then you know you go to the fire giant right now. If you call it once, then somebody will be like, oh yeah, I'll do it after this red buff. So I think that it can be good to have more than 3. I also think that if you really want this restriction, you might as well just restrict certain VGS lines like U-Rock. Completely unnecessary line in that regard, you know, just halfway, half the time it's used for BM anyways. On PS4, the mute option often fails. Oh, see, that's the issue. When you try to mute a specific player, that's more of the issue, that it should be fixed. And you continue to get the U-Rock followed by cancel that over and over until the limit gives you a brief pause before they start again. While we have the ability to globally mute ward ping, I'm not aware of any ability to mute the attack and retreat ping options, which are also used to harass players in-game. I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I think the issue here is that the mute function doesn't work properly, and that should be fixed more than anything. Karman the 15th. In your opinion, which changes would make non-meta guards become good for the competitive scenes? Depends on the non-meta guard. Some need more mobility, some need more clear, some need more damage, some need more like of a reason to be picked over others. Some need other guards to be nerfed to perform better. Can't make a generalization there. Gino Smooth. Hey DukeSloth, what's your favorite thing about SMITE? What has made you stick around the game for all this time? I think my favorite thing is, aside of the community, it is the perspective, the unique third-person perspective, in combination with a MOBA structure to the game. Obviously, Paragon has it as well now, but Paragon is just not up my alley. I think the fantasy theme, the god theme, really helps the game as well, and that made me stick around. Swagjaction. How are you so incredibly attractive? Thank you very much. I don't really think I am, especially not today because I look super messy, but thank you. Phoenix Ninja 13. For Duke, what's your opinion on Hasten for 1000? Oh, we had that a few times. Not gonna answer that again. Manly Mustache. To Duke, do you think a team of 5 Guardians could potentially work? For example, it could be ADC Ymir, Jungle, Athena, Kabroken, Solo, Kabrekken, Xintian, mid Bakos, support Capri Gap. I know 5 Magicals is bad, I was just wondering what do you think? Yeah, 5 Magicals is bad. Magical Protection Aura would completely ruin your day. You just need a Sovereignty, Heartwood, and like a single magic protection item on every player, and your comp is pretty whack. What is the lockdown gonna do when the damage doesn't go through? What, however, can work if you really want to do like a wonky strat, obviously not on the highest level of play, but is 5 warriors, because with warriors you can build Mystical Mail, and then you have 5 sources of physical damage that also deal magical damage, and counterbuilding that is a lot harder. 9911. What would you do if you could be a Willish for a day? I don't think I'm allowed to say that here. No, just kidding. I don't know. I've never really gotten too much into this fantasy scenarios in regards to what would I do if I was a god for a day. So it's not my kind of thought process, you know. I live in the real world, so I can't really say. Potatoes Master, top 10 gods that make the best use of CR. Jesus Christ. True Hercules, Thor, Susano, Willish, and some other assassins, and maybe some ability-based warriors. Striker Red. Do you think some gods are inherently better than others, or do you believe that the skill over the player decides the overall victory? For example, if D-list gods had to be played against S-ranked gods, but the D-ranked players are well versed in the character and combo skills, do you think the D or S-ranked god player will win the match? Depends on how well versed the D-ranked player is in that god, and how well versed the S-ranked player is in playing the game overall, aside of the god he's playing. So depends. The S god player has an inherent advantage because the god is usually a lot better. But if, for example, the D god just happens to counter the S god, there's a decent chance that the match will be won that game. Never underestimate like cheese pocket picks. They can work. It just depends on the player, really. Nikki Yandere-chan. What do you think can be done with Aphrodite and Hell to make them more viable? Which buffs would they need to become viable? Good, but not overpowered. I think especially Hell is not in as bad of a place as people make her out to be. She's not competitively viable, but Wolfie plays in ranked all the time. Aphrodite was played in the SPL even, in jungle, by Pern. Didn't, well, I mean, it worked once, I guess, but like, it didn't really become meta afterwards or anything, but they both could get buffs in here and there, but I don't think they are like, they're not trashed here compared to some others. Like, put a Raging against an Afro in the mid lane and the Afro will still win lane. But lad, what's your opinion on HS? Probably Heartseeker here. Particularly how it's showing similarities to Golden Bow and maybe removed from the game. Or is this Haste and Fatalis? I mean, we talked about Haste and Fatalis. I don't think Heartseeker will be removed from the game. If it's Haste and Fatalis, then we had that earlier. My apologize. I personally like to try on doing the achievements on most gods or others, but I see that few people find them interesting. You think that the achievements can be buffed to mean something and not just exist without purpose? If you do think that, you think they can change so achievements are more interesting thing to play for? I guess if you tie any sort of rewards to them, if you tie like a favor to them or gems or something, then people will look for the achievements. As it stands, I think most people really don't care, especially because the achievements are very imbalanced. Certain gods have super easy achievements and other gods have super hard achievements in comparison for no reason, really. They just slap out some achievements. And what I care for most is the icons from the achievements, so yeah. Not really sure what can be done there, or if Harris wants to do anything. Prince Nougat, which other games than SMITE do you enjoy and play? Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. I do play Borderlands. I do play... Actually, Paladin from time to time. I play Overwatch from time to time. There are a lot of older games that I really enjoy playing as well. Like Fable, Warcraft, quite a lot of games actually. The thing is that I don't find enough time to play them. Played some Gigantic, I want to play more of that as well. And I feel like there are a lot of games coming out that I want to, you know, get my hands on. But it's very hard to speak in like general points in what I'm playing, because most of the time it's SMITE. Mine Sam, Mine Sam, either of those. If you could create a skin for any god, what would it be and why? Armored Awilish, actually. Armored Awilish. You can Google this. If you Google Armored Awilish Rav, A-R-A-V, you'll find a DeviantArt page to an Awilish skin with heavy armor, but very much like the default otherwise. Looks really cool. I want that. Toxic Tempest. Duke, I've got two separate questions. Is Raging the worst card in the game at the moment? Arguably, yes. Definitely down there. Maybe not the worst, but one of the worst at least. And what system would you implement for BM and good mannered players? Sometimes I find SMITE so much less enjoyable when BM starts, and finding good as in mannered friends on SMITE is hard. Please keep me from solo queuing Hellgrind. Other than that, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you. I think there should be a reward system for good players, to the point that maybe it should reward you with a chest like once a year or something. A skin once a year, a decent skin. I think there should be encouragement in any regard, like people just like a message, like people have upvoted your kindness, your niceness. Give it a freaking ball around the frame, like League of Legends did. It worked at least for a while. It didn't ultimately work, but yeah. And with BM, just be a lot more harsh. I've seen so much shit in terms of how BM players have been and not even gotten a longer ban for it. Like just back after 1 week after using racist slurs and shit like that. Smite's ban system is pretty whack. I know it's executed and people get punished, but they should be punished a lot harder, and other games do that a lot better in how hard you get punished for misbehaving, and I think that's what leads to the community we have. Obviously, if you punish harder, it means you lose money, and most companies don't want to lose money because they want to keep them the customers. Mids asks, Midas XE, either of those. Hey Duke, which god would you like most like to see added Smite? Could you give us a quick overview of what you'd like the kit to look like? Like I said, I like the 4 Horsemen, Darksider style, give them the abilities from Darksiders and Wiguchi. Saya Okami. Watching your videos about Book of the Dead reminded me as to why I wrote the original version of my Hunter DPS simulator so long ago. Long story short, I disagreed with Cred about the importance of Golden Bow versus Odysseus Bow before Golden Bow was buffed. When I finished the initial version of said simulator, it showed a huge difference in power for clearing minions. But his comments in his videos from that time didn't take that into consideration until the patch after I confronted him about that. Why your video brought this to mind is pretty simple. Lifesteal for mages does have a second advantage, especially if it comes to it comes cheap with good power like Banker's Talon does. It covers any incidental damage that you take and lets you stay in lane longer. So this made me wonder, do you consider minion clearing early match the advantage it gives you, or do you only think of gods versus gods when comparing items? I mean, in this particular case, we have to point out that Book of the Dead also has lifesteal, right? Just to make that clear, it's not that Bancroft is exclusive in this regard, so that factors in. And that is why I value it over many other health items as well. I do usually focus the comparison on gods versus gods, because, you know, you don't really need to compare how you do versus minions. But obviously, an early game advantage with clearing is important as well. Power spikes is something that I do consider a lot. The sustain that I get from a wave over somebody else in regards to lifesteal is something that is worth mentioning, but it doesn't really matter for the final calculations. Generally, like lane sustain of any sort has to be kept in mind for any sort of calculation without being made the main point for a 1v1 trade. Philly Monster. What is your opinion on Ganesha's place in the meta, both in solo and support? I think in solo, not so much. I feel like the scalings are gonna go down anyways. She's not a solo god. He's just designed for support overall, even though I can see some people playing him in solo with its current functions, similar to Terra, you know. But I think he's a support. In support, he is actually very nice, I do believe, with his kit and how it works. Problem is he's countered pretty hard by leaps. And you always need a secondary frontliner because his peel alone is not enough, because he doesn't have that real big CC like for example, like Gab or Sylvanos does. And that makes it a bit annoying. That makes him like a less prioritized pick in ranked, for example. Garmin Snake. Sunday by what time, don't I wonder? Nah, your question's still in, don't worry. What do you think about Nuwa as a solo lane god? I was watching a Hardest Gods where she was mentioned, but she's generally talked about in a mid-lane mage capacity. The reason for my question is A, because I have noticed this season has a lot more of the jungle hugging mid lane than before, especially at mid-lane lower levels of play, and B, because of Nuwa's natural benefits infliction to building somewhat tankier than most mages makes me think of a Guardian solo laners. I would value any insights you can have, good or bad. Bruiser Nuwa is an interesting concept, especially if you throw in something like a Gem of ISO. You could do some, I'd call it wonky stuff still, but you could definitely do some interesting things with it. Similar to how we've seen a Pwash solo, but a Pwash solo has this inherent benefit of sustain in his kit, and survivability is very important early on in solo lane, and Nuwa doesn't really get that out of anything, though she has relatively safe clear. And with her somewhat limited mobility, not the worst mobility by far, but somewhat limited, she's very, very gankable early on, and if you're against the Thor, you're not gonna have a fun time. So, yeah. I don't think she can compete with the warrior if it comes to like an even level of play. Storm 124 G3R. For Duke, first let me say that I'm a big fan of your videos and find them extremely helpful and informative. Thank you very much. Now for my question. If you're playing Assault, which god do you dread or rather hope you would not get picked for you? Oh. Give me a moment to think here. Who'd I generally don't like getting very non-damage oriented guardians in Assault. Simply because, once again, very entitled, but simply because I think the average level of play in Assault is really low, and especially if I queue with some randoms or like solo queue, I don't want to have to rely on my teammates to win the game. So it's probably that. Captain Boan Riff. Is there currently a god that you think needs a kit, rework, remodel, both? And what do you think is the weakest right now? Like I said, I think there's quite a few gods down there, but the one that always comes to mind is Raging. Rework? A full rework? I mean, like I said, Bakasura I think should get somewhat of a rework. Not a complete kit overhaul, but like especially the two. Muffin the King. As a jungler, what is your favorite assassin jungle pick, and what's your favorite non-assassin pick? Favorite assassin pick is almost anything, because I mainly play assassins. Favorite non-assassin pick. Morrigan is fun, I guess. But I also like a lot of warriors in the jungle. I used to enjoy Nike jungle very much. It doesn't work as well anymore, but yeah, there's a few. Heinz, who's your favorite character? Like I said, there are many. I don't really have a favorite anymore. I used to be a Willish. Sampled Globe. Terra Bruiser. Viable. I'm assuming this refers to Terra Solo. And as such, yes. Absolutely. And that is it. What we have to say, however, before we close this off, are the winners. The winners are Shikako, Mr. JDC77, Kelthos09, Blue Piccolo, HDS... L? Is it I? I don't know. Someone. And Shinigami X0. You have to check your messages on the forums to get the codes. Which one you get, I can't tell you. It's randomized. So congratulations to you guys. And with that, we've made it through all. It's a long video. And I thank you guys for watching. I hope this was a lot of interesting info for you guys. I need a break now. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you all for the next one tomorrow. Hope you had fun with this. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to click that sub button and maybe the bell. It really helps me out. DukeSloth out.